All right, we are back. It is Monday night. I'm going to run it down tonight for you guys in the AMA like we always do every Monday and Wednesday night here on the channel. Thank you guys for taking time out of your Monday to come watch me answer a bunch of questions for people. I do get a lot of enjoyment from this. A lot of people ask really good questions. Sometimes they're redundant, and that's okay. I don't mind. We got a lot of new people, coming into the space, people that are inquiring minds that want to know about different things. And it's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment, education. Not a financial advisor. I am the only certification that I hold. Well, I hold a couple different certifications, but I'm a qualified family office professional, QFOP. Is the one designation that I hold, and then I have another one that is business certified for R3 Corda and their stuff. So I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, not a financial advisor. I don't have a Series 65, 763, or any of the fun stuff that a lot of our staff have at Digital Ascension Group that allow them to actually give you financial advice. So the opinions I'm sharing this evening are my opinions. They are not the opinions of the firm, Digital Ascension Group, or its subsidiaries. And so, take it all with a grain of salt. Before we get in tonight, we got a lot going on out there in the macro. Trump blocking the blockade, now also threatening to toll the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know, man. It's there's a lot of theater going on in all of this. And the stock market was up because of that today. And then, you've got oil also headed back up, inflation in the economy. Fed, I don't know what they're going to do. They're between a rock and a hard place. Lowering interest rates is obviously what Trump wants, but that will cause the reverse carry trade to unwind. And with inflation ticking up in the economy, I don't know how that's going to work out. They actually probably need to raise interest rates, but to print more money and raise interest rates, or they really, have two conflicting things at the moment where there's inflation on the rise in the economy, but we also have a credit crisis. We have credit funds halting withdrawals. We have the Fed actually, asking the banks what their exposure is to these private credit funds. Big deal. That's normally an indication that there is trouble on the horizon and that they may step in with an emergency meeting and enact some monetary policy. So all that being said, we've talked about the velocity of money here on this channel many times, but I think that's the way that they're going to be able to bring down inflation if they implement blockchain distributed ledger technology. One, it removes 2 to 3% inflation right off the bat. MasterCard, Visa, and other payment processors charge that much. I think you would get a significant reduction in the amount that they were charging moving to DLT for the settlement of those payments. And then separate of that, the velocity of money would pick up. So they could reduce M2 money supply pretty substantially if more money was flowing through the economy, which at this moment in time, we're at the the slowest velocity of money that we've ever had. Waiting on, a couple different things. Made a prediction earlier today that I'll share with you guys. I think Satoshi is going to move his Bitcoin. I don't know when that's going to happen or what's going to happen with the Bitcoin, but I do think the Bitcoin is going to move from those wallets. Is it a quantum computer that hacks those wallets that moves the Bitcoin? Maybe, but it could be Satoshi himself. Separate of that, I believe that we are going to see something to do with sanctions around digital assets if Iran is actually tolling people in Tether. I believe that would give the U.S. government what they need in order to sanction that network. We've already seen them sanction Tornado Cash in the past, so they've set precedent that they will do this if there are national issues, sovereign issues, and to be able to circumvent the SWIFT system or, aid and abet people that are against the U.S. Makes sense that they would sanction that. So we will see if either one of those things play out. Still looking for the reverse carry trade, still looking for liquidity and rotation out of Bitcoin ETFs into the XRP ETFs. Lots of things moving along out there in the space. A lot of other cool things going on our side of the fence before we get into the questions. Today is the launch of our app publicly. So all of our clients that have set up LLCs with us over the past really 3 years, we've done about 8,000 LLCs for our clients, structuring them the right way to be able to, increase creditor protection, provide them anonymity, and provide them the full breadth of the tax code to be able to offset tax implications when they do have them. Also, it's done in a way where, you get the benefit of long-term capital gains versus, most people, if they don't know what they're doing, will set you up a trading corporation. So make sure you're working with the right people to understand what they're doing. There are a lot of benefits to structuring an LLC. Not everybody needs one. So don't run out and go do it. You do have to file taxes on your LLCs, yes, but if it's structured the right way, it would be pass-through entity. You'd file as an S corp. The taxes on the balance sheet would flow through you individually, but you would, depending how you spent that money within the LLC, be able to get additional write-offs to be able to offset that income and lower your tax burden. So again, it's not an end-all, be-all. It just sets you up for a lot of success on the other side of price appreciation. Opens doors and avenues. So what we've done is we've married Uphold and their application with the LLC administration, trust administration, and all the things that we do. So you'll be able to handle that all there in one app. You get a bank account through Cross River Bank and Uphold. It's a white label of their platform. So this is the DAG app. Right now it's a web portal, but we will be rolling it out across Apple and Android devices in the near future. It'll be right there in the palm of your hand. So you'll be able to, move money around, buy crypto, hold your crypto, trade, lower trading fees, only 1% with no spread there in that application. And it'll have a lot of automations built in. So many people will pierce the corporate veil. They'll move, personal funds into the bank account or out of the bank account or in their crypto wallet or out of their crypto wallet associated with the LLC without writing a written action or written consent. That'll be automated in the app. So if you're moving funds around inside the app, you don't have to worry about it. If you need an update to your operating agreement, we're going to be doing that on a quarterly basis. If you need meeting minutes, there'll be things that queue you within the app to record those. Eventually, it'll just be like a voice note that you create. If you need board resolutions or all the other things, it's just the DAG app. It's not in the App Store yet. We will share with you guys the link to be able to download the app or get onto the website and use it. If you already have an LLC, you can just upload the documents. It's super easy. We do charge $100 a month if you don't want to pay the $700, which is the promotion for the annual renewal. So if your renewal, let's say you just got your LLC like last month, if you want to go ahead and pay for the future annual renewal, pay $700. You have no fees on the app for the whole year. There will be trading fees, but outside of those fees, there's no monthly, $100 that's owed. There will be a ton of additional things that we roll out on this app over the next 12 months. We're looking to provide debit cards with crypto cashback, credit cards with crypto cashback, lines of credit, money markets, access to other ways to put your crypto to work through staking, and also the products that we're developing at DWP. And all of that's going to be available in one unified application for all of our clients there. So the $700 is a one-time promotional deal, and it is, $500 off what would be the annual cost. We will provide a way to pay a lump sum if people want to do that, $1,000 a year, so it saves you a couple months in the future. But here in the beginning, we want to provide people with a lot of value, and I think you're going to get it. And again, we're not to scale with all the features that we're rolling out, so reducing costs a little bit to make sure that people are able to get in and benefit from it. So we've already got about 500 people using the app. Over the weekend, we rolled it out to the mastermind first, but today is the public launch. The promotion for the $700 renewal is only good until Wednesday night of this week. Wednesday night, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is going to be the cutoff for that. So if you have structured an LLC with us in the past, or you have your LLC with somebody else, and you want to administer it, and you want to have the bank account and the crypto exchange and all of it right there in one unified deal. We would love to work with you. Just upload your documents and pay the renewal fee, and you're good to go. So we've got a full webinar on that. You can email us if you have questions. Again, we will provide the link over here in the chat for people. There's been a couple of times that they've provided that. My wife has not put it over here on TikTok yet, but we will get it over here for you guys. And again, I can just pull it up here. Hold on. I don't know if I can share it in the chat. Yeah, I can share it in the chat. Pull it off Discord here. Dun, dun, dun. Should have had it ready. You know how that goes. I don't know if y'all ever, get going on something and you're like, oh yeah, probably should have done that. All right, there we go. Here is, I'll post it over here in the chat for you guys. Is it not going to let me? Maybe it won't. There it goes. All right, so there it is in the chat for anybody that needs it. Over there on Facebook, pretty much on every single channel. So again, would love to work with you guys. Go in there, check it out, give us feedback, and let us know what you think. And again, we'll be rolling out a lot more features to the app in the next next quarter, and then over the next year, we're gonna have a lot of stuff in there. And just so you guys understand, like, I want to give you the long-term vision, because this was asked in the mastermind this morning. We have a Monday Q&A, and we go over macro and a bunch of other stuff around digital assets around 11 a.m. Central Standard Time every Monday. And somebody said, what's your 5-year vision for DAG? So, we have multiple family offices that we consult for. We have a lot of high net worth individuals that have a significant allocation to digital assets. And as those assets appreciate, we want to provide them a platform or protocol that allows them to scale their multifamily office, their family office in a private permissioned ecosystem with all the benefits of blockchain and almost a DAO type infrastructure. So I call it a COW because it's more of a centralized autonomous organization. But, I'm going to talk about some problems here that seem like silly problems. Okay, I'm going to give it to you right now. It sounds silly, but this is really what happens when you make a lot of money. And then you have multiple generations kind of all working together or not working together if you haven't structured it the right way. So governance, that can be programmed on chain. A lot of people that are the matriarch or patriarch of their family office, they want certain things codified and structured and in place so that people participating with the family's money only get to do so under certain circumstances, right? And you can incentivize or disincentivize certain behaviors in order for participating in the family office. You can also cultivate certain skills and traits and beliefs by the way that you orchestrate this also. So a lot of people will set up a family constitution or a family board, a financial committee, ethics documents, governance documents, all these things in order to have some structure. Very similar to the XRPL or these other networks and how they have a voting mechanism from different validators on the network. So you could apply that same deal here. Now, sometimes in a family office, well, I'll talk about the family board and the financial committee first. So I've talked about this in the past. You really want to do this, especially if you've come into a lot of money, because as family members and friends ask you for money post price appreciation, you want some system or procedure to be able to vet those deals and see if it's worth doing. And if you don't have this, then there's going to be some animosity when you tell them no. But if you say, hey, would love to invest in it or give you the money, if you'll put together, your pro forma and the pitch deck and the thesis as to why, you need this capital, we'll put it over here in front of our financial committee. As long as it meets their parameters, we would love to make the investment. And then you have, they can't really be mad at you, especially if they don't put any of that stuff together. And maybe they do put it together and it's awesome. So all that being said, the financial committee stays within the guidelines of the lanes that you set forth as the matriarch or patriarch. You might say, I'm going to invest in real estate, private equity, and crypto. Like those are my lanes. I'm going to hire people that are competent in those areas, that have the background and expertise in order to be able to make those investments on my behalf. And I'm going to limit them to $5,000 at the maximum across the board for any investment. I kind of like Kevin O'Leary and the way that he structures his family office. an investment thesis, no more than 20% of his total portfolio can be in one asset class, and no more than 5% of his total portfolio can be in one specific investment. You're always going to be taking, you have at least 20 positions if you're doing it that way. And hopefully they're inversely correlated and across multiple sectors in the economy. And that way you're maintaining your wealth over the long term, because it's about wealth preservation on the other side of price appreciation, not wealth generation like a lot of us are looking for now. So all that being said, you set those lanes, whatever those might be for your financial committee. If they're going to make investments outside of those lanes, they will bring that to the family board. Your family board should probably have, somewhere between the lowest amount, 3 people, highest end, probably 9 people. You want it to be an odd number so that when you vote, there's an actual winner and you can make decisions. I most often see families choosing somewhere between 5 and 7 people on their family board. Now, so let's say, like, what would be outside the parameters? Well, if an investment was over $10 million or $5 million, whatever you said is threshold, they've got to bring that for vote. They might find a really interesting company in space, which isn't one of your things, okay? And so because it's outside those parameters, they bring it to the family committee in order to vote. Sometimes when people find out that the other person voted for something that they didn't want or they did want, they get a little pissed off. But if you had a zero knowledge proof way to vote, there's no way to know who voted for what, right? This looks pre-recorded. Not pre-recorded, my man. We're just rambling on a little bit tonight before we get into the questions. So that's one piece. And then also, like, hopefully you guys, have some vacation homes and some nice things, right? And if that's the case and you have, call it, you have 2 kids, they each have 2 kids, by the 3rd or 4th generation, you might have 10, 20 people all using the same different vacation homes and different assets that the family has. Well, if you're all issued a certain number of credits at the beginning of the year, and then you have to basically bid for certain dates on the calendar to be able to use said assets, then there's a mechanism where it's fair, right? Because if you're willing to bid more of your credits than somebody else to use a certain asset on a certain date, then, then they weren't willing to bid. So there's some way to be able to resolve those conflicts, which really don't, they exist today in family offices and oftentimes pulls families apart. So all that being said, I think that the infrastructure itself could all run on blockchain. You may have a privatized LLM or other AI that has, private permission data and access to case law and other things to be able to help you and your family make the best decisions when it comes to tax, estate planning, insurance, financial decisions, and investments. That's what we're building also. And this front end, this portal, this application that we're launching today is the first step in that direction. So if you want to be on that ride with us, if you can see the vision, if you're excited about it like I am, we would love to see you guys over there in the app. And again, we already have, somewhere around 600 users there in that application. And I think that that'll be much, much more by the end of the week. We have a lot of people that have questions. There's support tickets. Our team's working around the clock to make sure that we're answering those in a reasonable time frame. The app is not in the App Store yet. It will be shared over here in the chat by my wife at some point. But it is definitely over here in the chat in multiple places for people on YouTube if you want to jump over there to get it. All right. That is all I've got to start with tonight. Again, excited to be here with you guys. I am going to cut this one a little short. I have a 7 a.m. flight tomorrow and about a 3-hour drive to get to the airport. So I've got to be up at 4 a.m. Here Central Standard Time, and it's already 9 o'clock. So I'm going to try to get to sleep by like 10:30. So I'll probably run a little past 10 and we'll wrap it up tonight. And then we'll have the full one on Wednesday. Don't worry. We'll be here. All right, let's jump into the questions. We got XRP Ripple Diddler. He says, I just want to say hi, legend. Let's go. Appreciate the super chat, my man. We got a lot of good stuff happening out there, and I'm excited. Waiting for Evernorth to, get the S4 approved by the SEC. think we got some other ETFs coming in the near future. You know, a lot of conjecture from Ripple about 2026 being a really good year for XRP, which is nice to see. We got Navigator 444. They say, hey, Jake, I set up an LLC in June of 25. Other than a bank account, have done nothing else, but best course of action to get the app $700 promo. Again, you just go to the link below here in the chat, log in, upload your documents. As soon as those are in there, pay the $700 the renewal, and then you're not going to have any fees until after June of this year. So the way that that works is it covers your next renewal and all of the corporate veil service and everything else that we're providing in the interim. And then on the other side of that, it's $100 a month toward the next renewal. So, and for all the other features on the platform. So just so you guys understand, like Uphold does charge us fees on a monthly basis. We're white labeling their platform. There are trading fees on there, but they're far less than what you would experience on another app. So you get a reduced cost for the $100 on trading. Your bank account's not going to get frozen. Your assets or your funds, if you do take large profits in crypto, you're not going to have any issues. We do the KYB process and structure all of that. And they didn't have any of this. we came to them. I think we might even be their first partner on the white label solution. So again, super excited about that. And again, would love to work with you. All you got to do is just click on the link there in the chat, and off you go. We got AJ. He says, "Hey Jake, I already have my LLC. I am on a business trip and won't be back till Friday. Will I miss the $700 annual fee special?" My wife gave me some wonderful tea, some ginseng and some different stuff in there tonight. Supposed to keep me healthy while I'm traveling. She's always looking out for me. We're gonna stop at Wednesday night. For those that already have an LLC with us that might not make the cutoff, we may send out an additional email to those people. Again, loyalty is a big deal for us, right? People that are willing to stick it out and do things with us early always reap benefits in the long term. You can ask people in the mastermind. We have a lot of people that are grandfathered in at $25 a month that are in multiple higher tiers because they were there when we first started. Same thing on this stuff. Those that are in early, those that are partnering with us, we look at this as a long-term relationship. We want to make sure that we're taking care of people for the long term. So if that sounds like, something you're interested in, again, would love to partner with you guys. Mr. Shook, good to see you, dude. He says, happy Monday. I know you've had a hectic few weeks. Just want to say I appreciate you. And the tea lady, see you in a few weeks. Beyond Broke Mastermind, Carbon 3 Mafia. It's not 6-3 Mafia, but it's still pretty cool. C3 Mafia. Good to see you, dude. Yeah. We will have an event out there in Vegas here in the end of April. So excited to see everybody. About 300 people, 400 people that we're going to have for the mastermind on Wednesday night. If you're in the mastermind, you will get the information on that in the near future. And we are really excited to see everybody out there in Vegas for XRP Vegas this year. We got AWAGS. Good to see you. Appreciate all the super chats. They say starting at 1:45 p.m. volume kicked up on Bitwise XRP ETF. It was just a few hundred shares per minute, but then started doing 4,000 to 7,000 per minute. Clarity Act hint, disclosures, and mastermind code. So the mastermind code, if you do want to join the mastermind, you want to get early access to stuff, private deals, all the other things that we do there, more in real life events than any other community in crypto, you go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2. I'll talk about the Clarity Act for a second. So I know there's a lot of people out there excited about the Clarity Act, and they think we need the Clarity Act in order to move forward in the space. I am kind of, I don't want to say against that. That's not the right word. I was literally on Capitol Hill advocating for the Genius Act and the Clarity Act last year in the middle of June when they passed the Genius Act and pushed the Clarity Act out. I told everybody exactly that it was going to get pushed out. So my wife has put the link over here for you guys if you want to use that to get to the app. So separate. I would love to see the Clarity Act passed. I think that we do need real regulation in the space. However, I don't think we need it in order to move forward. And I don't think that the uptick on the XRP ETFs is a hint toward the Clarity Act. I think it's a hint toward XRP being adopted in the near future. And we know that Goldman Sachs is the largest buyer of these XRP ETFs. They hold more than anybody else. They're an institutional player buying up all of these positions. So if that tells you anything, and it tells me a lot, if they're buying up that much XRP through the ETFs, because that's the only way they can hold it, that they think it's going to do pretty well. So all that being said, I think with the SEC and the CFTC, working together in lockstep, issuing guidance, I think that's enough for the space to move forward. The one thing that I think we are waiting on is the OCC to come out and say, hey, look, like this is how stablecoin yield is going to work for the banks. We've had a lot of progress between Coinbase and the banks going back and forth. And again, they're talking about that being a piece of the Clarity Act, but I think that they could codify that and move forward because they were already pretty much worked through all of it on the Genius Act and then came back to the table and said, whoa, we want it different. Nah, you need to back up a step. You already agreed on this. We need to move forward to be able to issue stablecoins. So I think that's what's going to take place. And if that is the case, then they can let the reverse carry trade unwind. They can let all these things happen because there's going to be enough domestic demand for those treasuries out of as foreign debt holders rotate out of those into their own bonds and those flow back here to the U.S. We'll be able to buy them up. And that's what we need in place in order for all of this to happen. So waiting on that, again, the OCC, I think, is going to be the party that comes out and says, this is how this is going to work. I don't think we're going to need it in the Clarity Act. We do have a couple people asking about other jurisdictions for the app. So as you guys know, Uphold does not currently work for Canadians and it does not work for those in New York. We're working on that. As of today, it does not work. Our application does not work for the bank account setup and for the exchange setup in those two jurisdictions. I don't like that. I want to fix it. But if you do have a Wyoming LLC, I think we can get around it, maybe, for those there in New York. If you had dual citizenship there in Canada, we could probably figure it out for you. So, but if you are domestic to there, just in New York and you don't have the LLC and you're in Canada and don't have, a citizenship here, we are working on ways to be able to, eventually get to you guys and work with you all in the near future. All the way up. It says, congrats on the launch. Please explain the new DAG app and pricing. Okay. So let me pull this up here. I've got an email that was sent out to all of our clients. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to share my screen. That way you guys can see what's going on here. Perfect. All right. Dun-dun-dun. Nope, not that one. Share screen. Screen. Yes. DAG price. All right. Boom. All right, you guys can see this here. You can't see it on TikTok. I'm sorry, but I will walk through it for y'all. It is on YouTube if you want to jump over there. You guys are onboarding this week. Love to see it, Jolie. Looking forward to working with you guys. Okay, so here's the 4 different scenarios that may be the case for you in your position. You might already have an LLC. You might want an LLC. We're going to start with somebody that does not have an LLC yet. So you got somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 in your current crypto portfolio. And we used to charge $4,000. We had the promo code for $2,000. Now we're dropping that to $1,500. So because we're no longer using Laughlin, we brought this in-house. There's not additional cost for us, and we're passing those savings on to our clients. Beyond that, it's $100 a month, and that goes toward the renewals and all the compliance and the trading access and the bank account and everything else that we're doing That's assessed on a monthly basis. If you use the promo code, so let's say you paid the $1,500 for the new LLC, and then you went ahead and paid the $700, you have no cost on the app for the whole next year. So $2,200, which is $200 more than what the old LLC used to cost with everything included, gets you everything and the next renewal with no cost on the app. So you get the bank account and all the cool stuff that we're going to be rolling out this year. No cost to you. If you have an LLC and you're paying for my renewal at the time it's due. So if you don't take advantage of the promo, let's say you upload your LLC or you file your LLC and you just want to do a one-time cost after the promotion's over, we will charge just $1,000 for that. Again, that gets you a full year, no fees on the platform, or you can pay the $100 a month. And then we have other people that have already paid for their LLC and they prepaid for their renewal. You're good. You don't have any costs on this platform. You upload your LLC. We're going to know who you are based on all of the stuff that we have in the background. You won't have any cost until your next renewal. So you've already prepaid. Everything's good to go. You're set up on the other side of your next renewal. That's when it'll move to $100 a month. So I know that's a little confusing. You're kind of prepaying every single month for the renewal of the next year, or you can do a lump sum one time, just like you would do before. So hopefully that makes sense for people. Again, if you have additional questions, there's a full webinar that we did for clients on Thursday. Last week, we had a lot of people join the waiting list, and so they attended that. We recorded it to be able to share with everybody. And then we're going to be recording another one that's just FAQs for everybody. But would love to see you guys again there in the app, and all you got to do is go to the link that's been shared in both of the chats. All right. And we'll be adding trust to it. You can still get the trust through the website. I think we've actually reduced some cost on that. And that'll be added to the app. Again, we're going to be adding everything that I just mentioned, right? Like the long-term vision for this is kind of a centralized autonomous organization for you and your family with proprietary data set and your own proprietary LLM and everything all in one space, easy to access and understand so that, you're not having to chase tax documents or deeds and titles or your LLC registration or, all the different things when your life becomes more complicated on the other side of price appreciation. And some people won't want it that way. Some people will keep it very simple. And that's probably not a bad thing, but there will be a lot of people that want to do a bunch of deals, buy properties, own other assets, enjoy the fruits of their investments. And we want a seamless, easy way to be able to manage all of that with you guys. We got redeemed adventures. They say, hey, Jake, once a reverse carry trade begins to unwind, do you think in places like the US and Canada, it will hit the economy so bad that even the government jobs and veteran pensions will be taken away from people? I think that that's kind of a doomer outlook. I don't think that it's going to be anywhere near that bad for people. I'm hopeful that we're going to see them jumpstart the economy with both AI and distributed ledger technology to be able to significantly reduce the cost of things. I think there's going to be a complete resetting of these markets. The purchasing power of your currency, I think, will go up in comparison to the asset value, which we haven't seen deflation like that in a very long time, where your currency actually appreciated. So that's the outcome that I think we're going to get. Now, am I right about everything? Obviously not. So, take it with a grain of salt. Could it be a doomer scenario where the world ends and nobody has a pension? I don't think they're out to steal anything from anybody. I think that they're trying to make this right and figure out a way out of the hole that they've dug for themselves. And I think they've got it with XRP. We've got Bucky. He says, respect from one new to crypto and old enough to be her father. Why are banks against stablecoin yields? Can't they make the same yield with SCs, security credits? CDs are, I don't know what SCs are. There's going to be tokenized deposits. So they'll be able to take your dollars that you deposit in the bank, buy treasuries with that, and you'll have a tokenized representation of that value, which is a tokenized deposit, and they will be able to pay you a yield on that. The stablecoin yield, so this was the alternative, the two options that the banks had when they originally proposed the Genius Act. At least this is how it was stated to me by somebody that was dealing with all that. They gave the banks an ultimatum. They said, look, you guys either have to pass the yield on these stable coins to your patrons, the people that are using them in your ecosystem. And if you do that, then we won't allow the fintechs to issue stable coins. Or you can keep the yield for yourself, but we're going to have Google and Facebook and Meta and all these other fintechs become neobanks, and they're going to be able to issue their own stablecoin too, and they'll get to keep the yield too. And the banks, being greedy and wanting to keep the yield, chose to keep the yield and allow for these other counterparties to also issue stablecoins. And now they've come back to the table and they're like, well, never mind. We might want to pass the yield on if they're out of the picture, type thing. But it's too late. The bill's already been passed as the way it was. And so I think there's just a lot of back and forth to buy time here to make it look as though there's not a way for them to move forward on stable coins. When obviously there is. We've just seen Fidelity issue their stablecoin with FIDD, and I think you're going to see many, many more stablecoins start to come to the surface in the near future with these other financial institutions starting to build out their stablecoins. And Ripple's well positioned. They have Rail, which helps any institution issue their stablecoin. Guess where they're going to be issuing it? On the EVM sidechain of the XRPL. And it'll be interoperable with XRP. They'll use Palisade for custody. You'll have the ability to leverage that through Ripple Prime, and they'll also be able to manage your treasury there at Ripple Treasury. And that's their full scope of product. That's Ripple One, basically for institutions to be able to issue stable coins and then get all the benefits with a prime broker and treasury management and custody and identity all in one stop shop. So I think it's a lot of just back and forth and conjecture and theater. I don't see why they're being the way that they are, but that's the whole deal. The banks wanted to keep the yield, and so they allowed everybody to basically create stable coins, and they all get to keep the yield and won't pass it through. But again, tokenized deposits is a way to just skirt right around that. 222 Horton, thank you for the super chat. I don't see your question, but I appreciate the support. We got Moon Man 888. Gotta love the wealth number, my man. Thank you. He says, you said on a pod with Judy that the U.S. government could possibly sanction Tether to stop Iran accepting the straight crossing fee in crypto. Why would Iran want crypto if crypto mainly stems from U.S. companies? So Tether is the most internationally used cryptocurrency for settlement, really out of all of them. I can say, listening to Brad Garlinghouse talk at CoinAlts in 2023, I asked him about ODL, and at the time, the majority of the volume that they were settling on ODL was settled in Tether. It wasn't even an XRP. So all that being said, there's been a lot of people that have used Tether to circumvent sanctions or operate in a way to be able to be outside the U.S. government's purview. If the U.S. government were to sanction them, you've now got USAT, where they're launching their U.S. compliant stablecoin. Why would you issue a completely new stablecoin if you planned on getting USDT in line with whatever the requirements were? You wouldn't. You would just go ahead and change whatever you needed to on your balance sheet in order to be able to meet the new rules or curriculum that's been put forth by the U.S. government. So that tells me that they've set this up to be outside the U.S. purview and potentially kind of a scapegoat or something to use as a pawn or tool when they need to be able to suck liquidity out of the crypto market or cause problems, which it absolutely will if they were to sanction that. And again, that didn't come from me. That came from Neil. I can't think of Neil Hart, maybe is his last name. He's a developer at Twitter or at Ripple, excuse me. I was debating with scams after I put out the first domino theory back in March of 2024, so more than 2 years ago. And when we were talking about it on Twitter, I thought Tether might depeg. They were very adamant that Tether wouldn't depeg, but that it could be sanctioned by the U.S. government. And because of the illicit activity that's happened on the network, it's also a really good honeypot. I think that USDT was rolled into the U.S. government back in 2014, 2015, and they've used it to be able to buy up treasuries as China and Russia have de-risked from the U.S. dollar and sold those off. If we had to do that through the Treasury, I mean, the Treasury just had the largest buyback of U.S. Treasuries in history, $15 billion in one whack. If the Fed had to print the money to buy those back, it would have caused hyperinflation here domestically in the U.S. So we needed a proxy. Tether fit the bill for that. They've used it, and I think once the other institutions here in the U.S. want to compete at scale with dollar-denominated stablecoins, you just rug the biggest one that's out there, and that opens market share for Google and Amazon and all these other people that will be issuing stablecoins. So again, we'll see if that plays out. It's a possibility. It's part of my theory. Theories are theories until they actually play out, like the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. So we'll see. Bucky, again, he says, thanks, Big Jake, and hi to the tea lady. Why is Congress waiting for banks and exchanges to agree? Why don't they just hear both sides and then decide? Again, there's a lot of theatrics going on, I think, to be able to kick the can to whenever they need to kick the can to, buy time for certain counterparties to be able to get things in place to mitigate risk of collapse in the financial system. I think that there's a lot of people scurrying in the background, positioning themselves and reorganizing things and making sure that their systems work to be able to move to this next iteration of the financial system. And those that haven't made that transition are going to be left behind and in position of, not being able to compete with those that have been proactive. So, JP Morgan in the band, there could be licenses that Ripple needs in order to be able to operate at scale that they're having a hard time getting, or might be delayed for whatever reason. So, I think all of that's part of it, but we will see things, here in 2026 play out. Punk of the funk. Gotta have that funk. He says, hey, Jake, as enrolled tribal member residing on reservation land, how would donating to my tribe affect taxes on the other side of price appreciation? So your tribe actually works as an ecclesiastic exemption in the tax code, similar to a charitable foundation. So donating to your tribe would be a great way to be able to mitigate taxes post price appreciation. I don't know if you have the means to be able to run casinos or do other things there on tribal land, or have the connections to be able to facilitate that. I know some people that do, if you don't, and we can connect you. But all that being said, would be a great way to be able to mitigate taxes and help your community. Rick Johnson, my dude, he says, Vendel did a video. He emphasized not to rely on a single event to push price appreciation for XRP, specifically saying the reverse carry trade and any global crisis event. When he said XRP not to be used and the reverse carry trade happens, what do you say? I think Vendel's a smart guy. I think him and Verson are both great, over there at Black Swan Capitalist. Everybody can have competing perspectives on things, and there's nothing wrong with that. I tell you guys all the time, I'm glad you guys are watching other people and getting their opinion on things. You get to make your own opinion on stuff. I came up with my own thesis. I'd come out here and share it openly. So it will be an amalgamation of things that transpire that lead to price appreciation for XRP, but the catalyst that will be the main driver of those additional events is the circumstance that's playing out right now in the Strait of Hormuz, which I've talked about for more than a year, calling this before it ever even happened. It serves for multiple reasons. So again, it could serve for the catalyst to sanction Tether. It could serve for the catalyst for oil and energy to go up and the reverse carry trade to unwind and there to be a repricing in markets. It could change, how the dollar operates and remove the petrodollar. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with game theory, but oftentimes you would want to look for the one scenario or choke point or crux that you could use against your opponent in order to be able to accomplish multiple objectives. That's what I think is playing out right now. And I think a lot of the back and forth around, closing of the strait, opening the strait, all these things is kind of kicking the can, but it's also driving oil prices up over time. And it may actually even end up helping Iran when they reprice their dinar and their currency. If they back it with oil and oil's a higher price, that's beneficial for them. So they could be cooperating on this effort. Trump has negotiated and talked to them a bunch. This could be, I don't want to say it's pre-orchestrated, but it seems, again, theatrical to me. So all that being said, he's not wrong at all. Vandell is, like I said, very sharp. It is not just one event that will play out. However, the situation that's transpiring in the Middle East right now, I believe, is the crux or the catalyst for multiple macroeconomic events to transpire and culminate to the price appreciation for XRP, significantly higher than most people are anticipating. Again, perfect storm scenario, right? If you don't have all of these events play out at one time, maybe it is a slow, methodical rise to XRP over multiple years or another decade. I tend to think that things are going to be much faster, just based on the culmination of all these things playing out as we see them right now. Cuerva, they say, legend. Appreciate you. They say, what do you think of my crypto list from highest value to lowest value? XRP, HBAR, XLM, AVAX, Link, Hash, XDC, Flare, ZBAC, Ondo. Highest value. Well, I'd have to go look at CoinMarketCap and check all the prices, and I could tell you what the highest to lowest value was. That's not what you're asking me, though. I'm going to go from highest ROI potential over the next decade in order from highest to lowest. This is not financial advice. These are my best guesses, and that's what they are. They are guesses. They are not facts to be taken for your investment thesis. So obviously XRP, I think, is going to have the highest ROI of any listed there in the next decade. Second highest, I'm going to go with Hash, just because it's under a penny again. And it's not listed on a bunch of exchanges. And I do think that Mike Cagney is going to be successful with what he does. And I think there's going to be a lot of insurance tokenized on that chain. I think that Figure is going to be very successful. So, Hash would be the number 2 highest ROI over the next decade. Then probably HBAR, and then XLM, and then XDC. AVAX is already pretty high. Probably Flare. Well, and Flare may be further up the chain. I forgot about Flare. Flare may be closer to Hash and XRP. It's probably third if I was going to order it. We got Link, AVAX, ZBEC, and Ondo left. I think the least ROI is going to be on, out of all of these, ZBEC in comparison to the other ones. Then probably Link or Ondo in the second to last spot, not sure, and then AVAX, in the 7th spot. So XRP, Hash, Flare, HBAR, XLM, XDC, AVAX, Link, Ondo, ZBEC. And again, those are just my best guesses. A lot of people are going to disagree with that. Smarter people that I have a lot of respect for would probably disagree with that. Just on the spot here, we do these live. This is my visceral response to it. And again, appreciate the question. Fit for all, they say, you said XRP either saves us or we're screwed a few weeks ago. Can you go back to that? Yeah, I believe that. So we're currently in a debt spiral that ends in a deflationary depression. And if you didn't have a way to be able to move into a paradigm that accelerated GDP and actual growth of the economy, and we had to work in the archaic systems that we currently have now, with the advent of these technologies on the horizon, or even being implemented at somewhat at scale without the impacts, having driven the price of a certain asset much higher to be able to draw down debt against that, to be able to refinance everything and use that as collateral, it would. Japan's been in this position for the past 2.5, 3 decades. They're called lost decades. They've been in stagflation. Their economy hasn't grown. Their industrial complex has pretty much collapsed on itself. They're just now back to a position where they're starting to gain traction in their economy and grow GDP and have actual economic output again. That would be at a global scale if we don't get this right. If there's not an appreciating asset to be able to reprice things and anchor against, we used the dollar in the past, we've used gold in the past. There needs to be one top tier asset, and you would think that that would be the ledger or the protocol that all the value moved over and settled in, because basically you're backing that asset with all of the global markets and liquidity. That's what I believe XRP is. I believe that it is the backbone of the next financial system, similar to what bonds and US treasuries are today. If those collapse, we're screwed. And that's the whole premise. If we didn't have the stable coins to be able to drive demand for the issuance here in the US, because they have to back it with US treasuries, and everybody de-risked from the US dollar, our bond market collapses. We default on the debt because we can't service it without printing so much money that we collapse our own currency. So this is the only way out. It's backed into a corner. I think BlackRock and the G7 and many other people have been working on this for multiple decades, far further out than people really understand. We got Ryan Fruger, in 2004, and many, many things happening since then to be able to get this to market and scale and the adoption that we currently see today. And I think that BlackRock and Ripple are much more tightly coupled than people realize. Because that's what BlackRock was tapped to do. It was to fix the debt, package it up, restructure it, make sure that we didn't move into default, and that there wasn't a total global collapse of the economy. And look, there's lots of things that BlackRock has done and probably will do that I don't necessarily agree with at a visceral response. But I would challenge people and say, look, like, things that get to the president or even the CEO of a corporation, if it gets to them, it's a problem nobody else could solve and probably sucks no matter how you solve it. Anything that gets to the president, there's going to be collateral damage on whatever decision he makes. And you basically have to weigh out like your objectives and what's best for your nation. And if you're the global reserve currency like the dollar has been, also what's good for other nations, because you are technically their steward, because they have to use your currency in order to be able to facilitate economic transfer and buy oil or energy or all those other things. It's a lot to be able to deal with. So people look at the decisions that the big players have made, And a lot of it seems counterintuitive to the average person and seems like it's against you, which I would agree with a lot of that, by the way. However, if you look at the other options and the other collateral damage that could have happened, if things didn't go this way, it could have been worse. Now, is there like a Project Looking Glass or something else that allows them to orchestrate things in a way with the least collateral damage and the best output? I kind of think so. And I think that's what we're going through right now. COVID sucked. Could have more people have died? My dad died from COVID. Okay. So like firsthand experience. But I mean, that or World War III. I don't know, man. That seems like less of a crappy situation than a World War III nuclear holocaust. So anyway, I digress. I want a seat at the table because I want to be able to see all these things and actually work in the interest of the average person. That's why I do what I do. That's why we're building what we're building. But all that being said, yes, we are absolutely screwed if we did not have XRP to be able to solve this problem. We got Ziggy and Jiggy Tails. Ziki and Gigi Tails. They say, hey, Jake, I'm a totally newbie. I have some XRP. I was just wondering what to do to avoid paying a ton of taxes when XRP skyrockets in value. Well, you've come to the right place. We'll talk about all the fun ways that you can mitigate your tax obligations on your gains for your crypto. So first way would be we get an executive order for Trump that there's no capital gains on American-based crypto. That would be great. We don't currently have that, but it could happen, right? So that would be number one. That would be the best case scenario. Don't know that that's going to happen. It might happen for corporations that are using it on their balance sheet or transferring value with it. And we help a lot of people set up LLCs to be able to hold their digital assets in case that's the outcome that we end up with. Because last time they confiscated gold from the US public, not from companies. So anyway, might as well use their system against them if you can. And, you know, worst case scenario, you get all the benefits of the LLC and potentially even more, depending on how this goes. So that'd be the first one. You know, setting up the LLC is great. Gifting things out of your taxable estate into a charitable remainder trust would be one. You know, you're not going to, there's still going to be tax implications if you cash out inside of a dynasty trust. You can pass those tax implications somewhere else. It's actually taxed at a higher rate if you cash things out inside of that structure, if it's not done appropriately. You want to work with an estate planner or seasoned tax attorney on a lot of that stuff. Sounds complicated. What's the easier way to do it? Well, you could just borrow against your XRP. Again, I believe it'll be a tier 1 asset. And if that's the case, then it's going to be premium collateral. And anybody and everybody would love to loan against your XRP at very good interest rates, which I do think will be the case in the not too distant future here. So, you know, even if they make it tax-free to sell it, you may consider borrowing against it just because the cost of benefit of selling it versus keeping it over the duration is probably better to hold on to it. So even if you're paying 3, 5, 7% interest on a loan against it, as long as you're using that liquidity effectively, you're going to be just fine. The other way that you can, there's a couple other ways. You would want to get it into some type of tax-free or tax-deferred structure. So, you know, inside of an IRA, we do IRAs at Digital Wealth Partners. We have the only product out there that generates additional returns on your XRP, compounds it inside of an IRA. Held at Anchorage, institutional custody, advisory, all the fun stuff over there. We're working on a special for IRAs. I think I've got my team on board with what I want to do, and we'll let you guys know when they give me the green light. So that's one way inside of an IRA. Another way would be inside of an insurance policy. So, you know, we're working on that also. We have PPLI, private placement life insurance. You have to fund that with cash as of today, but you could borrow against your XRP, fund the policy with cash, borrow against the cash value in the policy, pay off your original loan, And then you have XRP that could grow tax-free inside that insurance policy that you can continue to borrow against. We've done that a couple times. I would love to just do an in-kind transfer and move the XRP inside that policy. You also have Meanwhile, which has done a whole life product or universal life product with Bitcoin. There's a possibility that XRP might have something similar in the not too distant future. That's another way to be able to pay that into an insurance policy, have it grow tax-free inside that, and pass to your children tax-free without the estate tax or the death tax here in the US. Or other jurisdictions also, by the way. PPLI is great if you're outside the US. You do not have to fund it in cash. You can fund it in kind. So if you're not in Canada or the US, that's a great option for people. The other way that you could structure this would be to set up a private family foundation and donate your XRP, your appreciated XRP, to the foundation. And you would actually get a tax write-off for that amount that you donated. So if you cash some out, you made a donation to your family foundation, you could wipe your taxes that way, as long as it's long-term capital gains. So if you get it inside of an endowment, so endowments, insurance policies, qualified accounts like 401ks or IRAs, those are wrappers that you can put around your XRP that make it tax-free or tax-deferred, depending on what type of structure you have for the qualified account. And again, you know, borrowing against it's probably the easiest way to be able to mitigate your taxes post price appreciation. We are an hour in, so I'm going to hang out for another 15 or 20 minutes here. I'm not going to get to all the super chats tonight. I can guarantee it. So if I miss your super chat, do not email it to the team this week. They are inundated with customer service requests on the app. But you can absolutely DM us on pretty much any social media platform, and my wife will get those to me for the live on Wednesday night, and I will hang out some extra time on Wednesday to help you guys out there and answer all these that I missed tonight. DFW Mike, good evening, sir. Good evening. New account set up. Awesome. Payment made. Awesome. Glad to be working with you. Waiting for everything to be approved. Beyond Broke Mastermind. Beyond Broke barbecue meeting of the minds incoming. Now, all I require is price appreciation. Good evening to the tea lady. Stay safe, brother. Thank you, man. Mike is one of the fantastic people here in Dallas that helps us host additional events for the mastermind. We have people all across the US that put together little dinners and side events for those members there in the mastermind to come together, break bread, get to know one another, and you know, cultivate relationships before price appreciation. So you have cool people that you can go do cool stuff with once you all, you know, retire in the not too distant future. But he's who heads up a lot of the stuff here in Dallas, the Dallas chapter. And again, appreciate him for all that he does there in the group. If you want to join the mastermind, and I haven't even said the code, but once tonight. But if you want to check it out, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. We got Nick Capoodle. No, that's not what it is. It's Nick Ku Paddle These. I'm butchering that. I'm sorry, my man. He says, "You're a legend." Thank you. Appreciate you. Hypothetically, would DAG ever have a deal / take someone less than 50K XRP, but more than 25K? Thank you. The app that we're rolling out right now is really kind of the avenue for that. We've had a lot of people with interest, wanting to work with us. This is that opportunity. So if you want to set the LLC up, you would absolutely be in the group that would need it. If you have, 25, 30,000 XRP at $1.30, you're pretty close to $50,000 in digital assets. That's right at the threshold of where you probably want to start looking at setting up an LLC. The name of the app is just, it's at digitalfamilyoffice.io. It's the DAG app. You can scroll up here in the TikTok chat and also over here in the YouTube, X, and Facebook chats in order to click on the link. It's app.digitalascensiongroup.com/LLC/. But anyway, this is the avenue for that. And over the long term, we will be able to provide all the yield options and the other stuff that we're creating on the institutional side with Anchorage, along with other DeFi opportunities and other avenues there inside of the Fireblocks instance that we're working with Uphold on. We want a blend of both. Obviously, the institutional products that we're creating are a bit more conservative. They tend to be a bit more regulated and less risky on the risk curve. Still risky, but not as risky as DeFi. But we have a lot of people that want to escalate up the risk curve, and they're okay with those inherent risks, and they want a good counterparty that has some additional oversight and multi-sig on the wallet. And those are the things that we're looking at creating there inside of that Uphold instance over the long term. So again, that's the avenue. If you have less than that, we would love to work with you, and you can hold your assets right there over there on the Uphold app, or on the DAG app, excuse me. Mohammed, my man, he says $14 trillion unwind is $100 billion batches in $100 billion batches via XRP, 100 million XRP at 100K, SBI, MFUG, SMFG, recycling the JPY, each loop under the MV equals PT. Wouldn't high V mean we don't need $14 trillion JPY equivalent sitting there? Also, please explain the mechanism of why BTC USDT stress leads to high XRP. So there's a lot of abbreviations and things that I'm sure a lot of people didn't understand. Even some of it I'm a little leery on, but basically converting all these different currencies back to the yen when the reverse carry trade unwinds, I do think it's around $14 trillion. I think that estimate's appropriate. And they could absolutely use XRP as a liquidity buffer in that circumstance or scenario. And if it were $1,000, it would be much easier to process all those transactions, to your point. And I think Japan's positioned to do that. I think SBI and the other players you mentioned absolutely would prefer to leverage XRP in that capacity. In addition to that, talking about BTC and USDT, in order to be able to orchestrate the rotation into XRP to drive demand high enough, I think that you're going to need announcements from people that are saying they're using XRP. I think Elon will talk about XRP. I think XRP, they will drive to somewhere around $100 in the short term in order to be able to facilitate things. Does it fall after that because the reverse carry trade unwinds? I was thinking about this earlier today in the mastermind. I anticipated that a lot of this would happen very quickly. A problem, reaction, solution, the crisis would occur, and then they would roll through these dominoes in order to be able to save the system. But they've been much more methodical about all of this than I had anticipated. We had, the ETFs, and we had some time pass, and then we had the Genius Act passed, and then some time passed, and then, toward the end of last year, or right after the beginning of the year, we had Venezuela taking over. And then now we have the Strait of Hormuz finally, here in Q1 of 2026. There's been some time between all these things, and that's allowed other people to get ready in order to be able to make this transition. I can tell you MasterCard and Visa and a lot of the other counterparties I've talked to de-risked from Tether many years ago. They don't hold it on their balance sheet. They don't transact in it. They don't touch it with the 10-foot pole. That tells me all I need to know, that they are eventually going to rug it and use it to rotate things into XRP the way that they need them to be in order for them to win. And a lot of people, there was a guy that asked on Twitter earlier today, and sometimes you type things out and then you just don't send it. I don't know if you guys ever do that or not. I think that's therapeutic. I think that you get what you need to get out, and then without the conflict. So I should probably do that more often and not stir the pot. But anyway, he mentioned, he was like, well, what prevents the banks and institutions from just building their own system and not using XRP? XRP is their own system. It's what they built. That's the whole point of this whole thing. And if you do enough research and look deeply enough, you eventually figure that out. And again, I'm not here to say that that's the absolute end all be all, and I know more than anybody else. I would encourage people to go do the research, look at things, listen to multiple people. Again, so but all that being said, I do think that they are going to undermine Bitcoin and Tether in order to rotate it into XRP like they want to. Oh, Mr. Johnson, he's got so many super chats. Appreciate you, dude. He says, if XRP knife falls to 85 cents, how can the BOJ use this falling asset to get liquidity to help with the reverse carry trade? Please explain for babies. Would they skip XRP then? Okay. Rick, you have more what if scenarios than anybody I've ever met in my life. I appreciate the question. But like, what if the sky turns purple tomorrow? Look, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the volatility is going to be. I know what the outcome is. And does XRP rise really high before it burns and collapses and then, be used on the backside of that? I'm leaning more toward that, to be honest with you. I'm leaning more toward them driving liquidity into XRP before the reverse carry trade unwinds. Like I mentioned before, they've been very methodical about this whole transition, and for it to be on its back foot or much lower when they need it takes time for them to drive the price to where it needs to be. Unless it's a flip of the switch moment, which again could possibly be. Will it fall with everything else? Also possible. I don't know. I wish I could give you like a play-by-play, and this is where you need to buy, and this is the exchange that's going to have liquidity, and you'll be able to execute your trade because Tether is going to be a liquid, and you're going to have to do it in USDC, and you won't be able to trade more than $10,000 at a time because of the slippage. And I wish I could give you the play-by-play on all that. I don't have it. And I don't know anybody that says they do. I don't know that I would trust them. I just know what the final outcome is. So again, you can, go back and forth on how we get there all day long and what if the scenarios. And again, I appreciate the questions, but I don't have a good answer for you, I guess is the answer. Dr. Flex, you don't get upset when I get critical of price appreciation and ask pointed or even critical questions. I know many people beat you up doing so. That's wrong. Please understand we want price boom last week. Our jobs suck. So I'll probably end on this. Curate the life that you want now. I know a lot of people are hoping and dreaming and wanting XRP to change things for yourself. You're going to be left with the same questions on the other side of it. And I know you got bills to pay, you got responsibilities, you have families. I'm not saying it's an easy transition to make. Okay, if you really do not like your job, there have been 3 points in my life where I woke up with a knot in my stomach and I lasted one more day at those jobs. Can't do it. I have to enjoy what I'm doing. I have to get fulfillment from it. And I've quit jobs that other people would be like, why would you quit that job? That, like, I was making 6 figures, had a company truck, a company card. My wife and other people said I was crazy. But I knew it was right for me, and it's worked out. So I would just say I would encourage you to think about what would really give you fulfillment. What would you wake up every day excited to do? And again, post price appreciation, you'll have that luxury to figure that out, right? You'll have something to kind of bridge you along. But drinking mimosas on the beach and hanging out and, kind of screwing off for a little while, traveling. I've seen other entrepreneurs that have had exits, large exits. They retire for 6 to 12 months, and that's really the most they can handle. They get bored out of their mind after that. So I would encourage you to start thinking about those things now, right? Feel like you're already wealthy, manifest that. It is coming to you in the not too distant future. And start, reconstructing your life in a way that you look forward to every day and you're not hating your job and just getting by until this is over. And it can be a means to an end, right? Like if you have a really high paying job and you're just sucking it up so that you can buy as much XRP as you can, even though you don't like it. I get that, because there's a means to that end. But at the same time, if that's what you're doing, I wouldn't complain about it. I would look at that as a blessing and an opportunity. So, anyway, I'm probably being preachy, and I apologize. These are just things that I wish somebody would have told me sooner in my life. Because there was lots of times where I didn't like what I was doing. It kind of sucked. I didn't get fulfillment from it. There was no enjoyment. I didn't look forward to my day. I had to do other things outside of that to really find enjoyment. So now this is rough. Some days stressful, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't rather do anything else in the whole world. So at least you can find fun in the stress, right? As far as this Fastenal blues, I didn't mind Fastenal. I didn't get any fulfillment from Fastenal. I was helping people, right? Like I felt good about helping people. I was giving people what they need. If they called me, I was able to provide them service and get them out of a bad position. If something went down at a plant, I felt like I was able to help get that back up and going and save people money and time. But it wasn't an impact on people's lives. They could have bought it from anybody. They just would rather call me because I would make sure I picked up the phone and got it for them quickly. So anyway, RJ, we got to play golf, dude. Get with my wife. I know I'm traveling a lot, but you and me are going to play golf soon. We'll grab a couple more and then we'll wrap it. We got MDC. They say, if we set up an LLC with Laughlin, will that still work seamlessly with the new app? Yes. We've built it that way. You migrated over, super simple and streamlined and easy. All you got to do is upload that to the app. And again, you can just pay the $100 a month, or you can go ahead and pay the $700, which is cheaper than the renewal that they charge. We've got, I'm told that I can't register my LLC with the new app because it's a multi-member. Yeah. My question is two-part. Will I be eligible for the $700 promotion later? How am I supposed to remain in compliance if that doesn't happen until July? So, great questions. If it is a multi-member, we don't currently have a way to be able to facilitate that. If you are an international person working with an LLC, we also don't. This is an MVP. We're first iteration of this got to market. So hang out with Laughlin or whoever you filed the LLC with. You will be eligible for the promotion later. So look, again, loyalty is a big deal for us. If it's our fault that you did not get access to the promotion because we weren't ready for your circumstance, we will honor it later. Okay. Once we get that out there. So it will take us some time. I can tell you we're going to prioritize things that drive additional value on the platform. And there's a lot of edge cases that we will get to. But in the next quarter, they're probably not the priority. And it sounds like people have kind of already explained that to you by you mentioning July. That's about the time frame that I do think is reasonable for us to get those circumstances, those kind of edge cases onto the app. So again, appreciate your patience and grace in the transition. I'm sorry that, we weren't able to accommodate every single circumstance or scenario right out the gate. We threw this together in really about 20 days after we moved away from Laughlin. So shout out to my team. So grateful for them. They've worked around the clock. They've done a fantastic job getting this to market and putting it together. I don't tell them thank you enough. I'm just one dude, right? If we didn't have fantastic employees and great people working and seeing the vision, none of this is possible. So thank you to all the employees that may or may not watch this later on. And I want to say thank you to all of our clients, because again, if you guys didn't care about what we're doing, if this wasn't of value to y'all, then none of it really matters. So, I am a client. I'm trying to make sure that I build things in the way that I would want them built if I was using them. Same thing for pricing on stuff, same thing for all of that. Most people play a zero-sum game. I've talked about this a lot. I want to align incentives with people and make sure that, we make a fair price for what we're doing, but I want to make sure that people always are getting more value than what they're paying for. And sometimes you have to believe a little bit too. Okay. So I'll give you an example of this before we go tonight. We launched the mastermind with a hope and a dream 3 years ago. When I first came out on Twitter January 6th. I remember the Saturday. I'd never asked anybody for anything. I've just showed up for 8 or 9 months, talking about what I was doing, mitigating taxes, structuring things the right way, giving value. And I'd been part of some other masterminds, and I met Max, and I said, hey, look, I'd like to put this together. I don't know what response we're going to get, but I'm going to ask people and see what they say. I had a Stripe link. It wasn't even like a web page. It wasn't nothing. I said, look, $25 for a lifetime membership, you to all the levels, or to Carbon One. To Carbon One, 25 for forever. And we had about 200 people sign up on that weekend. And I was like, oh crap, now we have to build this thing. I didn't know what the response was going to be. And we set out to set up a mastermind to be able to do private deals and have community events and financial education. And it's been fantastic. And the culture that's been cultivated there is nothing short of incredible. You start with things and have intentions, but to see it actually manifest has been surreal. Is the only way I can experience it or explain it. So all that being said, like, that was a hope and a dream, and it's worked out fabulously. This is kind of that, first MVP to market, same dream, same scope, large aspirations. We'll continue to knock down the different things to add additional value to it over time. And for those that want to jump on board and believe in it, you will be highly rewarded. I can promise you that. I will work literally day and night to make it happen for you. Again, I apologize for all those that I missed on the super chat. Appreciate all the support. If I did miss your super chat, please send it to us on social media. Just DM it to us, and my wife will get it to me, and I'll be able to answer it Wednesday night. I can see. Well, you know what? I saw a pink one here. I'm going to try to get. There's a $50 one that I don't want to just leave out here. Justin's entrepreneur says, "Greetings from Norway." Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Listening to you just before bed at 5 a.m. Use of warm up before bed work. All the best to you and the listeners. Can XRP be the ESDR? I think it'll sit in the basket. I don't think it'll be the ESDR, though. I think it'll be the exchange rate peg that facilitates value transfer across all of the currencies in the SDR. But they could, if Liechtenstein or Luxembourg were to adopt XRP as their currency, it could sit in the basket of the ESDR. So yeah, lots of other super chats that I missed. Again, sorry for cutting it short tonight. I got to travel tomorrow, headed up to New York. I've got 3 separate dinners with some family offices and high net worth individuals that we're putting on up there and hosting. Shout out to Apex and Kari for helping us out with that, and Jared over at the Headliner Series. So with that, again, if you want to work with us, the app is app.digitalascensiongroup.com, and you can go check that out, set up the LLC, add your LLC, set up your bank account, your Uphold account, all the fun stuff, and we'll be launching much more there in the near future. If you want to work with Digital Wealth Partners and get your assets into institutional custody, you have more than 50,000 XRP, we would love to work with you over there. Just go to digitalwealthpartners.net and you can sign up. And then last but not least, again, everybody in the mastermind, it's a fantastic place to be. We would love to have you there before price appreciation when we lock it down on the other side of a $10 XRP. So if you do feel so inclined, you want to check it out. Again, no contract, month to month, cancel anytime, $2 to try it out. If you use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, for the first month there at beyondbroke.com. Thank you guys. Hope y'all have a wonderful week, and we will see y'all Wednesday night. God bless. And we'll see you on the next one.